I mean, when you say they're suing the government for investigating fraud, what exactly is their argument, and what do you say to refute their argument? I noticed California. Are there any red states, Republican states that you've investigated?
Stephen A. Smith tried to destroy a 24-year-old kid on live TV, but something nobody saw coming happened. Every trap Stephen set, Nick broke it clean. Stephen's face said it all. Pure shock. He never expected someone that young to hit back that hard. But before we go further, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take 2 seconds and subscribe to the channel. Now buckle up, because things are about to get spicy. Let's get into it.
Now, again, going back to it, because you've accused organizations of massive fraud in videos now seen by millions, I'm just wondering about the responsibility you take for a part of a story. Like you said, nothing has been wrong or whatever the case may be, but you pride yourself in being a journalist. So that responsibility is something that I'm going to say obviously weighs heavy on you. What methods do you go through to ensure that you are as correct as you possibly can, that people should believe in what you're saying? I know back right now, the way you're coming across, it's like you're batting 2 for 2 with Minnesota and California, but I'm still asking that question nevertheless.
Yeah, so all the information I get is public information. The daycare money from Minnesota, that's public information. As far as how much money they're getting, the money for the hospices in California, that was public information from CMS, from HHS, Health and Human Services. So I report on what's happening. And then sometimes, like in my California video, I was like, I went to one of the locations, like, I don't know if that's enough to say this is fraud, but it is strange. This location got $19 million and has 16,000 beneficiaries.
Oh, Stefan, you're very clever. And did you notice his trick here? He spends 30 seconds pretending to admire Shirley, then slips the knife in. You're batting 2 for 2 like the kid just got lucky twice. That's not a question. That's bait. And Shirley doesn't bite. It's all public information, he says. The Minnesota daycare money public. The California numbers from the health agencies also public. He doesn't hide behind big words. He names the sources. He drops the figures. $19 million to one location with 16,000 people on the books. That's not a guess, folks. That's a receipt. And let me tell you why that answer hit so hard. Stephen wanted a kid scrambling to defend himself. Instead, he got a reporter listing his sources like he's done it 1,000 times. Because he has. Critics say this kid is just an amateur with a camera. Really? This is the same reporting the Department of Justice took so seriously they charged 98 people with more than 60 already found guilty in court. The amateurs don't usually trigger federal cases. So when Stephen couldn't shake the sourcing, he switched targets.
Supporters say you expose real corruption, but critics say your reporting fuels suspicion toward immigrant communities. Do you worry there's a line between exposing fraud and creating fear?
No, I think fraud's all of our dollars. I mean, when you pay taxes, it's just as much as a Republican dollar as a Democrat dollar. And I think these politicians need to stop using immigrant communities to commit fraud.
This is the move that makes most guests fall apart. It is emotional blackmail dressed up as a deep question. The hidden message is ugly. Maybe catching the fraud is the real crime. Watch Nick refuse to even step into it. Fraud is everyone's money, he says. The real villains are not the immigrant families. It is the politicians using them as a shield to steal. 2 sentences, the whole frame flipped. Let that sink in. Stephen tried to make Nick the bad guy for catching the theft. Nick turned it straight back on the people who allowed it. That is not a defense. That is a counterpunch. Here's the part the shaming crowd hates to admit. One of those daycares, the one famous for misspelling the word learning on its own sign, pulled in nearly $2 million while sitting basically empty. It is shut down now. Permanently.
Nick, you know what? Going back to that, and let's talk about Minnesota. It's December of 2025. You gained attention, national attention, for videos you had posted online touring supposedly abandoned Somali-run daycares in Minnesota that you claimed were fraudulently receiving public funding and confronting workers, by the way. This led to federal investigation. CBS News reported that although some locations had safety and cleaning violations, they remained operational, licensed, and inspected by state regulators shortly before the video, ultimately finding the allegations to be unsubstantiated. This is what they were saying about your video. In fact, the woman, I forgot her name, was found to be the program's real ringleader, not Somali citizens. So one would ask, knowing that, how do you make sure you don't spread? I want to make sure, how do you make sure you don't spread misinformation or what some would label extreme viewpoints? Talk to me about the process that you go through to ensure that folks wouldn't be able to say that kind of stuff about you.
Yeah, it's super important that people can trust me as a source to go out and show them what's actually happening inside our country. So, for instance, with the Minnesota fraud that took place, the man inside that video, David, he had been investigating this fraud for years upon years, and then he had the physical amount of money that these daycares received. And so, when I go unannounced to these daycares, for instance, and there's not a single child at any of these daycares in Minnesota, it's not even. That is just straight up fraud.
This is where Stephen thinks he finally has Nick. He pulls out a news report, throws around the word unsubstantiated, mentions a ringleader, and basically asks Nick to defend himself against spreading false information. This is the big swing. This is meant to end it, and Nick does not even flinch. He calmly explains the man beside him had been digging into this fraud for years. He shows up unannounced. Then he drops the line that ends the whole argument. There was not a single child at these daycares. Not one. Think about that for a second. You do not need an accountant for that. An empty daycare collecting millions in childcare money is not an opinion. It is a crime scene with the lights left on. Critics say he went too far. Too far. While the talking heads argued about his tone, real investigators were proving him right. Officials estimated the state may have lost as much as $9 billion to schemes just like the ones he filmed. $9 billion with a B. A congressman is literally trying to give him a medal for it. That is not too far. That is not even close to far enough. So Stephen, striking out everywhere, reached for the dirtiest tool left, the political smear.
As I sit here and think about what you're saying, when I notice Minnesota, I notice California. Are there any red states, Republican states that you've investigated?
Yeah, I've looked into some of these states. When I do these videos, it takes a while for me to do. So I do, for instance, want to go to Texas and expose some of the H-1B visa fraud that takes place there. You have a lot of these people who are coming over on these fake H-1B visas, and they're taking jobs from Americans. I know there's a lot of fraud here in Florida as well. In the state where I'm from, in Utah, I've heard there's a lot of fraud as well. I don't know if I want to kick the bee's nest where I live, but I also think it's the responsibility of these states to also go after this fraud.
So you're not of the mindset it's not a conservative or Democrat thing or liberal thing with you. It's crime, it's lawlessness versus lawfulness. That's what it is for you.
100%. In Minnesota and California just happen to have the most amount of fraud. That's why I went there.
Stephen tries to corner him. Are there any red states you investigated? The trap is clear. He wants Nick to admit he only targets one side so he can wave him off as a hired gun. Nick calmly tears it apart. Texas, he wants to expose visa fraud there. Florida, plenty of it. Even his own home state of Utah. And he is honest enough to laugh about not wanting to cause trouble in his own backyard. He does not dodge. He hands over a whole list. Then, this is the best part. Stephen says it out loud himself, so it is not a conservative or Democrat thing. It is lawlessness versus lawfulness. Let me be very clear about what just happened. Stephen A. Smith just made Nick's entire argument for him. He talked himself right into the kid's conclusion. That is nothing short of an own goal on live TV. Nick seals it clean. Those two states just happened to have the most fraud, so that is where he went. You do not blame the smoke alarm for the fire. But believe it or not, Stephen still had one card left, the pitiest one of all.
My question to you would be, you're identified as a 24-year-old conservative online influencer. You didn't mind that introduction at all. Why is the word conservative in there? Why can't you just be an online influencer? Because it would give the impression that, you know what, you're favoring one side over the other, and the vice president, who happens to be a conservative, the vice president of the United States, is speaking up for you. It would give the impression that you're partisan in what you're doing. What do you say to people who would have that suspicion?
Well, I'm not the one who read that. That was you who read that. If you would have asked me to give an introduction, I would have said independent journalist Nick Shirley. I wouldn't have said conservative. Okay. That has nothing to do with it. Like I look at what I'm doing right now is a public service for everyone in America. Mm-hmm. And it is interesting how by doing this, people have labeled me as a conservative, which I am a conservative, but that's not what my journalism is. Like I support Trump. I think Trump is a good president. I think he was the person who more than 50% of the country voted for. And so it is just funny that, like, me exposing this, everyone wants to say you're conservative.
This is where it gets almost painful to watch. Having lost on the facts, lost on the motive, and lost on the credibility, Stephen retreats all the way back to one single word. Why is the word conservative in there? Why can't you just be an influencer? He is trying to turn Nick's identity into the scandal, and Nick's answer is the cleanest knockout of the whole night. You are the one who read that, not me. If you had asked me, I would have said independent journalist Nick Shirley. He did not write that intro. Stephen did. And Nick just calmly handed it right back to him. You see the genius? Stephen built a trap out of a word. And Nick pointed out that Stephen was the one holding that word the entire time. He is not ashamed of who he is. He just will not let a label decide whether the truth is the truth. And here is something simple. Whether you like a politician or not has nothing to do with whether 16,000 kids who do not exist are collecting real money. Critics say his politics taint his reporting. But facts do not have a political party. Stephen A. Smith came in with a 4-part plan. Kill the sourcing, poison the motive, destroy the credibility, slap on a label. 4 big swings. 4 clean misses. And through every single round, Nick never raised his voice, never lost his footing, never took the bait. He just kept doing the one thing that drives the whole shaming machine crazy, telling the truth with the receipts in his hand. Critics say he got lucky, but you do not get lucky 5 times in one sitting against a professional. They did not want to debate the fraud. They wanted to debate him. And that is exactly why they lost. Because you can twist a man's words all day long, but you cannot twist an empty daycare cashing 9-figure checks. So now I want to hear from you. Did Stephen A. Smith land one single real punch in this whole interview? Is Nick Shirley doing the job the big media outlets refuse to do? And since when did just telling the truth become a conservative thing? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this breakdown, and subscribe to the channel for more. Channel for call, channel, shens.